Right, welcome to the Have Not Room. We got a special off episode here. Me and Brian are going to talk about kind of what's going on in the house right now. We got a new HOH, some noms, we got a veto winner, we have a planned renom. It's been a quiet-ish week, I would say, compared to the first 2 weeks, but I'd say that most weeks probably would have been quieter than last week. So.
Right. Yeah, so Kamu won HOH, which I think not that surprising. I feel like him being so athletic, we kind of expected him to win something at this point. Also, it was a wrestling themed one. I don't know if he had a little bit of an advantage being a UFC fighter, the ring. Hard to tell, but
it was a booth comp, so
that's true.
His strength had no impact on us at all. We saw the start of it on at the end of Unlocked on Friday night. But yeah, basically they watched this like scripted wrestling performance with Jesse, and then they got into a booth and they had to answer questions about it.
And shout out Jesse. He was one of the masterminds last season, but he seems to have patched things up with Big Brother this season. He's back. Ben, how many times has Jesse been back on our screens post BB11? If anyone had the right to be super bitter and never associate themselves with the show again, it's him. But he's stayed there, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, too many to count. And I mean, to be fair, right? Like he was, invited back after being a pretty early boot on BB10 the very next season.
That's true.
Which is like, BB10 had a pretty stacked cast. Obviously Brian Hart was also in the mix, who was also the first boot from that season.
Right.
So very interesting.
I was so excited when I watched that season that there was a Brian on it, and then he immediately gets clipped.
I think the fact that he was even on BB11 to begin with was impressive, especially given that the way that he ended up on BB11 was like, oh, we're going to split the house into these 4 cliques, right? And one of them is the jocks, and then we're going to do a really physical challenge to see which gets an extra member and gets their returning player to come back. And, a surprise to no one, which ended up winning.
Right. But yeah, always fun to see Jesse back. He was very fun in House of Villains on the season he was on, especially that finale. If you haven't watched it, definitely go watch that season. But what is Kamu's, I guess, goal, or what are his goals this week for getting
his
out?
Primary goal, I think, for the week is to get Jason out if he can. And so his original noms that he proposes right after he wins and the feeds come back is Jason, Lala, Mallory, with Jason being the primary target, Mallory being the backup target. Both of them are basically the only people from the other side of the house that have shown any kind of competence in competition.
Right.
At that point. So that I think makes sense. And then he ends up having a conversation with Drew, and Drew was like, hey, shouldn't we, backdoor Jason? We just did it with Rome. It worked out pretty well. Just don't give him an extra chance to win himself off the block if he can. And Kamu was like, you know what, you're right. And then Jason and Lyric basically got swapped out, and his noms end up being Lala, Lyric, Mallory, with Jason as the planned renom, looking for a backdoor.
And it really worked out perfectly for them here, where, like you said, Lyric was the last minute replacement nom, and then she ends up winning the veto. They weren't really targeting her. It's totally fine for her to take herself off for their plan to go through. So shout out Lyric. I think she needed Rome to get voted off. We talked about it on the main show the other day, but I think Lyric could potentially be a player coming down here with Rome out of the house.
Yeah, it definitely gives her a lot more flexibility to kind of maneuver around the house. She's definitely not seen as much of a threat. However, this veto does kind of put some shine on her as a potential threat. Where when you have this tool shed group that has a lot of cracks, but technically has not broken up just yet, and their idea is let's pick off as many comp threats on the other side as we can before we fully start this civil war. when that's kind of their prerogative on how they're targeting people. If Jason or Mallory do end up going out this week, which is looking likely, then if we do get kind of a straightforward week next week with like a Haley or a Chuck HOH, and they don't want to take an internal shot yet, we're probably going to look at like whichever of Jason or Mallory survives with Lyric as the backup.
That's a good point. I didn't really consider that.
Yeah.
Really, but are there cracks in this bigger alliance showing this week? What's been happening there?
I mean, there's been cracks for like basically the entire game at this point. They like started heavily showing last week, and then this week it's continued. Angela and Dee have been repeatedly spiraling about distrusting Drew in particular, but also Barrett to a lesser degree, because they spend so much time with the other side, which was the purpose of them as allies. They talked about this regularly. They repeatedly bring back very useful information, like the information that Angela and Devins had about Jason. We saw it was shown through the episodes that Drew was the one that brought that back to them. But yeah, they basically think that Drew and Barrett are like biding their time to like flip as soon as it becomes possible, because it hasn't really been possible yet, because like all three of the HOHs have been within the core of this majority. So that's something to look out for. We have the idea that like the crossovers was supposed to be this real subgroup within the tool shed. And then within the crossovers, you had the three icons. At this point, the three icons are pulling further towards the red corner. And at this point, I would say confidently that the red corner is the more real of the two alliances, to the point where the red corner last night has like sort of brought in Angela as a sixth. This was a conversation that had been kind of brewing for a bit. Kamu was against bringing her in and telling her about the alliance because, telling somebody, hey, we've had this 5-person alliance for 2 weeks. How about you kind of join us as a sixth? It's not like
it's not too appealing, no.
Yeah.
And Angela famously chill with any perceived slight against her, so I'm sure that'll be fine, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously she knows about the red corner already, and her allegiances are with Dee and Devins, Dee in particular. So it wouldn't in this case matter, but like it's not a good instinct. And obviously, like the Kamu, Haley Chuck trio don't know that Angela already knew. So like from their perspective, it should be not a great idea to do this, which is Kamu's instinct. Kamu like some semi-jokes, semi-serious with Dee and Devins, like, hey, let's make a new 6-person alliance and call it the blue corner. And Devins was like, yeah, that's not going to be confusing at all.
Yeah, the show's like, please don't do that.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess luckily for the confusing, whether or not it's going to be confusing or not, Haley of her own accord goes and tells Angela about the red corner last night, and then goes to Chuck and is like, yeah, we brought Angela in. She's our sixth, I told her. And Chuck was like, didn't Kamu not want to do that? And then Haley's like, and then Haley goes to Kamu, apologizes. She's like, yeah, I didn't know that, you didn't want to do that. And then says, like, if you want to throw me on the block, throw me on the block, which is dumb.
It's like, okay, that's not going to happen, but sure.
Yeah. She like goes and like self-flagellates over it basically. But yeah, now Angela technically is the sixth member of the red corner. And so the icons are like more firmly this like, fulcrum between these two crews. And they are, I think at this point, pretty likely going to start to fully ice Drew and Barrett out of this core majority.
Tough for Drew and Barrett. I did see Drew on Unlocked made a final 2 with Kamu. How real is this?
I mean, they both said in their confessionals, their DRs, that like to them it's like kind of like semi-real, where like it's kind of like a good short-term relationship they both want to work with, but like in this conversation where they make the alliance, they compare it to like the Hitmen, and it's not the Hitmen. Yeah. They're not going to final 2 together at the very least right now. Like I mean, obviously things could change, right? But as of right now, Drew is like kind of trying to set pieces up for people to target the like red corner trio, right? Like he's hoping that Lala goes this week and that both Jason and Mallory survive so that one of them can win HOH and try to target that crew and maybe get Kanu out of the game. So yeah, it's not super real. It's like it's one of those like kind of things you set up and then like if it becomes relevant, then it becomes real.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. So I think, the vets have found themselves in such a great spot. I know that the Camu, Haley, Chuck alliance isn't the most popular online with the online fan base, but from the vet's perspective, it just makes sense at this point in the game to hitch your wagon to three people who seem like they're going to be pretty competent in these competitions. And we might be in a situation like, we were watching BB22 and we're like, is anybody going to take a shot at each other in the committee? But it never really became like advantageous to do so because the committee kept winning and winning. I wonder if we're going to be in a similar situation here with the red corner, just like dominating comps because the veterans are no slouches. And then these three newbies seem like they're going to be pretty good.
Yeah, it's definitely on the table, I think, especially if Jason does lose a blockbuster and go out on Thursday, right? Like, he's for sure the most capable competitor on the other side of the house. And at this point, like it is probably just going to come down to like the comp outcomes of the next few weeks. But even if you have like a Mallory or a Lyric, or at this point, even potentially a Barrett and Drew HOH, we're kind of looking at a situation where, I guess we can talk about Devon's, right?
Yeah.
Like, he receives the power this week. He goes into the time capsule. He comes out with a Diamond Power of Veto. So even if they get kind of targeted here, the Diamond Power of Veto might bail them out. Now, the Diamond Power of Veto is considerably more powerful if you are in the majority. And there is kind of an issue here where if they do fully ice out Drew and Barrett before this becomes relevant, so say Jason goes home, say they ice out Drew and Barrett completely flip, we get like a Mallory or a Lyric HOH, and Mallory throws up Devon's D Camu on the block. Even if Devon's uses the Diamond Power Veto on himself and throws up Lyric or somebody, for instance, or like Lala or whatever, somebody that they think is I probably Lala, just because they want to make sure that they would lose the blockbuster. Like they at that point would not necessarily have the votes to save D or Camu if Drew and Barrett are fully on the other side, which is why icing out Drew and Barrett right now is like a huge blunder. It's totally unnecessary to do at this point. Like they should be waiting like 2, 3, 4 weeks before they start to make the moves that they're making against Drew and Barrett right now.
Right. So I think let's talk a little bit about the Diamond Power of Veto. The first season that it was on was BB12, right? With Matt Hoffman using it. So can we kind of explain how it works for people who maybe weren't watching back then?
Well, it supposedly is going to work differently than it did in BB12.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, this is good too.
So the two kind of main examples of it being used or being strategically relevant were BB12. Matt Hoffman opens Pandora's box and gets the Diamond Power of Veto. Later or the next week, the Diamond Power of Veto is good for 2 weeks. The next week, Brendan wins the HOH. There is a moment where Rachel, who has already been evicted, comes back into the house as a Pandora's box punishment, leaves a message in pretzels on Brendan's HOH desk to like backdoor Matt, basically. We get to eviction night. Brendan is the HOH. Matt and Lane are on the block, and Matt takes himself off the block with the Diamond Power Veto, puts Kathy in his place, and then the brigade and their structure vote out Kathy as kind of like a sacrifice, basically, because they couldn't. They would obviously have taken out Brendan if they could, but he was HOH, so he was immune.
Yeah.
And then obviously in BB21 is the other main example where Christy wins not a Diamond Power Veto, but Diamond Power Veto upgrade, which allows her to upgrade the Golden Power Veto to a Diamond Power Veto. There's a famous moment where Cliff has, just kind of come back. He's got power. He's going to try to, disassemble Grateful, which is the majority alliance at that time.
Yeah.
At that time, he puts Jack and Jackson on the block. Jackson wins the normal power of Veto, and Cliff initially is going to replace Jack with another member of Grateful, but Christie basically extorts him and says, I have this upgrade. I can upgrade Jackson's power of Veto to a diamond power of Veto. He can use it on himself and then pick one of your allies or people, and we can just vote them out because we have the numbers. So you have to do it for us is basically like the idea. Otherwise, we're going to ruin your HOH anyways. So work with us and not against us. And this is the more interesting use of the diamond power of Veto that Rick could potentially implement if he actually is able to keep a majority, which is instead of using it, you kind of use it in the way that like Yule on Strawberry Cook Islands uses the God Idol, which is as like a implied threat. You go up to somebody and you extort them who have extort the person in power, like, hey, I have this thing, work with me or I'm going to screw you over with it.
Right.
It's the same thing that Yule did in Cook Islands with Jonathan with the God Idol. The same thing with Christie did with her Diamond Power Veto upgrade with Cliff. Both of them never actually had to use their power. They used it as a social leverage point to extort a person who was in less power than them to do what they wanted.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting if they're allowed to use it on eviction night still. Is that
no? So this is the different thing. So in the case with Christie's power, it would have been an upgrade on the regular Golden Power Veto, and that would have occurred at the veto meeting. Okay. Whereas Matt's version happened on eviction night. When Matt stood up to give his eviction night speech, he pulled the Diamond Power Veto out of his pocket, took himself off the block. Kathy went up. Kathy immediately was voted out like minutes later. So that's not the case here. It's been confirmed, at least from how Devin has described it, that it will take place at the veto meeting after the normal Golden Power Veto ceremony stuff is done. So
yeah,
if Devins is backdoored or Devins has an ally like D who is backdoored, he can still then use it to remove the renom as well and then replace the renom with a new renom.
Right.
And yeah, the veto holder, the veto winner, if it's a different person, and the HOH are all immune from being nominated as normal.
Yeah. With Christie's situation, it feels like Cliff could have just lied and been like,
that is something that was
I'll do it.
Yeah.
And then was, just not do it.
There was criticism levied at him at the time for not doing that. Yes. That is a thing that he could have done.
That's what I would have done if I was in Cliff's position.
It is a hard situation to be in because when you are the HOH and you're being extorted like this, right? Like, yeah, you can do this. You can take out somebody from the majority alliance. But now, like, you're like the number one target headed into next week. Whereas with what Cliff did, he was actually able to bide his time for a bit more until Grateful naturally broke up on its own. And then, Cliff and Nicole were able to kind of pick up some pieces at that point and make it.
Shout out Jessica for being the one to really crack that alliance open.
Yeah. So yeah, there's like, obviously results oriented thinking, but it did end up largely working out for Cliff.
I'm not saying my inclinations would have been the best. I just would have been like, you can't tell me what to do. Fuck you.
100%. I think that is like a reasonable, like, immediate reaction.
Yeah.
And I think like when you're in a position, like a minority position, it's probably like the correct thing to do to like, you kind of have to be taking these swings, even if it's like high risk, because if you don't take like a high risk swing when it's offered to you, you might not get an opportunity to take any swing.
Right. Yeah.
So like there is a chance that like Mallory wins the HOH. First of all, there's a chance that Devins doesn't ever do this, and he just uses it as like a big reveal, like normal idol situation.
Which, knowing how he likes to be flashy, that's not too crazy.
Yeah. And then so there's a chance he never does it that way, and there's a chance that if he approaches Mallory and is like, "Hey, do what I want," or I'm gonna like put Lyric on the block, or put Melody on the block, or put Lala on the block, or whatever, like. Yeah, there's a chance she tells him to fuck off, right? like,
Yeah.
That's kind of in Mallory's, Like that's kind of in her personality to do that, I would say.
Right. So let's say Jason does win the blockbuster again. What are the chances that it flips onto Lala here versus just Mallory being the one who gets taken out?
It's not impossible. There are people within the tool shed that want Mallory to stay over Lala.
Yeah.
Haley, in particular, really does not like Lala. They have like kind of a beef for various reasons. And so Haley would prefer Lala to go. She even talked about Lala going over Jason, which is not happening. But yeah, she preferred Lala to go over Mallory. Angela has a really close relationship to both Lala and Mallory, but seems at this point to be leaning to want to keep Mallory. And then both Drew and Barrett, whose opinions at this point aren't super, they're not like having a super amount of sway on the decision making, but both of them also do prefer to keep Mallory over Lala. Whereas Dee, Devins, and Kamu at this point would prefer Mallory to go over Lala. Probably because Mallory would put the three of them up if she wins next week, which is smart. Yeah, that's reasonable.
No, I think, yeah, it'll be interesting. I think there's still some juice left to this week. Jason won his last blockbuster pretty convincingly, and I think like that was probably, of all the blockbusters we've seen, one of the more demanding ones because you're moving all these pieces and stuff. We'll see what we get. Last year when Riley lost, that was kind of a crapshooty comp where it's like either you're going to be good at it or you're not, or you're going to get lucky or you're not. So anything can really happen in the blockbuster. But I do think Jackson is Jason, not Jackson. Talking about BB21, you put it in my head. I do think Jason is the odds-on favorite to win a comp of the three of them, but anything can happen.
Yeah, and I mean, look, the week's not over. There is some potential intrigue today. Something to keep an eye on if you're going to check out the feeds today. Last night, Taylor approached both Devins and Kamu kind of individually, but like with knowledge of this happening to each other, to propose a 5-person brigade style, like cookout style alliance.
Okay.
With what ends up being her, Kamu, Devins, Barrett, and Lyric.
Okay.
And she essentially lays out to both Devins and Kamu this kind of structure of the house using M&Ms as like a visual aid, where she sees the house as 5 trios: the icons, the like red corner trio, which she calls the cool kids, the littles, Drew, Barrett, Yash, and then Taylor, Lala, Jason. And she's like, I want to take one person from each trio, make a secret alliance, and then have them have essentially what she calls tethers, which are basically parachutes, with their trio. On paper, it's a really powerful structure, but like it's kind of a little late, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's like, yeah, week 1 maybe, but week 3 probably not gonna happen.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd say look out today for Devins and or Kamu routing this out to their people, and look out for potentially there's, I think, a non-zero chance that the backdoor target might flip onto Taylor because of this. It's, I know Kamu really likes Taylor on a personal level, but people like Dee and Angela in particular, did make an early week push for Taylor to be the target this week because they see her as one of the smartest players from the other side. They see her as a potential winner candidate for whatever reason. I think, up until this point, she hasn't been gaming too hard. She's kind of just been like on her own, like in bed a lot of the time, like reading the Bible, like, not socializing or strategizing too much. So I think part of it is just kind of like ability aspect. But she definitely has like strategic chops in there. But I think connecting the like strategic ideas to like the understanding of people, and Kamu tries to explain this to her, like, hey, you realize that like people already have their people, and like all it takes is one of the 5 of us to like rat this out to their people because they don't see it as a better situation for them, and this whole thing blows up and we're all screwed, right? And Taylor's like, you just gotta believe. You just gotta believe that it works.
You just gotta believe sometimes, I guess sometimes that works out. Not often, but sometimes Hail Marys pay off. It'll be like
Yeah.
Caleb Williams versus the Commanders a couple seasons ago.
Yeah, I mean, look, I appreciate that Taylor is doing something because she's been
Yes.
doing very little up until this point. So like even if it is like a really high risk play that's probably going to blow up in her face either tomorrow, today, or like at some point in the near future, I appreciate that she's just not kind of like waiting for the game to come to her anymore. But yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on. If Devins rats this out to D, and D and/or Devins rats this out to Angela, D and Angela were already on the like Taylor is like a strategic threat, social threat. We need to get her out. Like a push for sure could be made today to take Taylor out instead of Jason.
Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting to see if that happens. I do like that she is at least putting some effort in. But it just shows how important it is. Like you either have to lay low, completely low in the pre-jury section, or you have to be aggressive. You can't lay low and then be aggressive because then you become a threat,
Yep. 100%. And I think like being aggressive is definitely, especially in modern Big Brother, it's like by far the correct play. Like I think the like idea of going to sleep for a month and then kind of waking up is just not like a feasible strategy anymore.
Yeah, a bit outdated at this point. So, anything else going on in the house that you wanted to talk about?
No, those are the main things to keep an eye on today and tomorrow. Today, if like this kind of blows up on Taylor, if like if it doesn't blow up on her, if an official backup gets solidified between the tool shed of whether it would be Mallory or Lala leaving. Right now, it seems like Mallory is where it's leaning, but I think it definitely could flip either way. And then we get the veto meeting tomorrow, and then probably a relatively quiet rest of the week. But yeah, those are kind of things that we could look out for. Whether this blows up on Taylor, what the backup nominee or backup option if Jason wins Blockbuster is, assuming he is still in the back door. And I guess like people are going to get down. They're pedants who are going to be down my throat for saying backdoor because Jason played in the veto. But whether Jason is going to be the target,
it's not a true backdoor. We get it.
Yeah. But and then also whether Drew and Barrett kind of see their real position in the house and like make a full attempt to like 100% fully cut bait with the tool shed. They might wait until after the HOH outcome, because if like a Haley or a Chuck or a D win HOH, they probably have to like at least play nice for another week and hope they don't get targeted.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes. They're kind of in a position that's very comp outcome dependent right now. So
yeah. And was there any word on how close the veto was? Did Lyric run away with it, or was there some intrigue?
People said that she did pretty well. I think it was like a knockout style where like it was like a knockout bracket style where you like picked your opponent. So like your name got drawn and then you picked an opponent, and then somebody else's name got drawn and they picked an opponent until there was only one person left. There was some drama, I guess, where Mallory, I think, got picked first, and she immediately called out Lala as her opponent. And Lala was unhappy because, they're supposed to be on the same side. They're supposed to be like working against, Kamu and Haley or whatever. And Lala was like, "Did you pick me because you think you could beat me easily?" And Mallory says yes.
I mean, okay, yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
it's only 6 people. You make it's from a 1 in 6 to a 1 in 5 chance. Sure, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I like it's for Mallory, there's no difference between any of the 5 outcomes where she doesn't win it productively. Yep. Like either she's on the block next to Jason or she's not on the block at all. Like there's no productive difference whether Lyric's there, whether Lala's there, who particularly uses the veto on who. It doesn't matter. So I don't think this is an unreasonable thing for her to have done.
Yeah, I do like that. It seems like it was Ballerina, and just a week after Kamu said he would never be in drag, he gets to wear a tutu. Very fun.
It's unclear whether it was Ballerina. There are people saying that it was like pickleball themed, which is also funny with Lyric winning a pickleball.
Brutal. Yeah, that Rome
right after Rome leaves.
Yeah.
and there was
He
like one.
transferred his powers through the midnight kisses to
Yeah, I think it might have been like a points based thing. I don't know if it was like, like a shuffleboard or a skee ball or something similar to that. I don't know what exactly the like mechanics were. So it wasn't exactly Bowl Arena, because they were talking about how like Lyric had the two best scores of the competition. She got like a 98 or a 92 and an 82 or something like that. So like there was some like way that you could get a high 2-digit score with the. Well, I guess
yeah.
we'll see how it works on Wednesday.
I always like Bowl Arena, so maybe we'll see that again someday. But this should be fun too.
Mm-hmm.
I think they really like to use their LED board that they have now.
Yeah.
So probably something like with that setup.
Yeah, maybe like a spin around and then like do like a skee ball kind of thing for however many points you get, something like that, or like a something of that nature is kind of what it seemed like, but with a pickleball theming with a ballerina. I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah. Listen, I'm an avid skee ball player. I feel like I'm very good at it, so I'd be thrilled to have a skee ball themed veto.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, people joke all the time that like Big Brother comps are like carnival games, right?
Yeah, no, yeah. If you're in the mix to be a player in this, go to Dave and Buster's to train. Like, one, Dave and Buster's very fun to be at as an adult, even, but two, you might luck into some very similar comps there.
Yeah,
100%. All right, Ben. Anything you want to promote or plug before we get out of here?
No, I'm interested to see where this goes, even if it is kind of a quiet or more boring week. There is still like boiling and bubbling that could blow up even by Thursday, and if it doesn't, then we have another chance at an interesting HOH outcome. So we'll see.
Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning. Actually, it's like, oh, this week's a little boring, but it's like, still love Big Brother. I'm still like glad that it's on right now.
Yeah, the season has a lot of potential too. Like it's not completely dead in the water just because it has kind of one more boring week.
Right. All right. Well, you can find all of our content scattered across our channels. We can get everything's our main channel. There's Fake Nerds for daily video game news. This is, of course, Better Radio or the Have Not Room, depending on where you're listening. Follow us on TikTok at GameBots, where we talk about Big Brother, Survivor, traders, all kinds of stuff over there. Obviously, right now, it's mostly Big Brother because we're in the thick of it, but we should be getting, I feel like, some news soonish about the civilian trader season when that's going to drop. And other than that, Blindsiders is coming up with, we keep getting commercials for the new era of Survivor, where it's like sometimes you need to reinvent yourself, which I hope they really are reinventing themselves, because the new era felt a little stale after a while. And at least it seems like we have two tribes in the promos, which I've personally been wanting a two tribes season for a long time. So that's all good. Other than that, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you in the next one.